Hey y'all, welcome to the Honesty Circle, the safe space to discuss growing in adulthood, mental health, faith, and all the things in between. It's your host, Sierra Elise, and I hope you're taking care of not only your mental and spiritual, but your emotional and physical health so you can be your best self this week. Hey y'all, welcome back to the episode of the Honesty Circle. It's me, your host, Sierra Elise. And if you're watching this, you see a few new things. One, you see I've cut my hair. I got my hair cut. It is gone. I've never cut my hair before. So we're entering 25. Just like, let's say, getting rid of dead ends. We're walking into a new, I just feel good about this next year of life. But we also are going to be doing something a little bit different here because I don't have my iPad. I didn't pre-prep notes like I typically do. Because this is something that God's been working with me on. And that's really trusting him and leaning on him. And I want to talk kind of about my experience, what I have been pondering on, thinking on, and stuff like that. So one thing that's been happening, basically, I've noticed that I don't trust God with the everyday things, right? And I say that because it's I feel like when the big things in life where it's like money, job, house, all these things, I'm able to put your trust in God and let his plan be what it is and what happens, right? But I've noticed that on the day-to-day things and with my work being busy for the past multiple weeks, I had not really leaned on God in getting me through the busyness of work. I didn't lean on God in the busyness. I didn't lean on him for the strength like I would in any other situation. Because this I'm thinking it's day-to-day stuff. I can handle it, right? But I've noticed that is not right? We're supposed to be leaning and trusting on God in every single thing. And it is something that takes time and energy and practice, right? It takes practice to be able to truly lean into God. And every time whatever is inside of you wants to go somewhere else, wants to do something else, it takes so much energy to be like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to lean on him. I'm going to let his plan run the show, basically, right? And so why I say this is really important to me because I would say it's something very new. When I think about all my whole life, right? I never really trusted God with the small things. But it was I was able to trust him with the big things. So it's I'm trusting him that he'll give me a job. I'm trusting that, my bills will be paid. I'm trusting him for all these bigger things when those things were a worry or a stressor or anything like that. But when it comes to just the strength for the day, and I know sometimes I include it in my prayers, but I have found that when it gets really, really busy that I'm not leaning into that. And so God's basically just been dealing with me of okay, but how are you going to lean on, how are you going to do that? And so I'm thinking, I'm okay, how am I going to just be intentional in leaning on God and letting him and letting his plan run rampant in my life. Let his plan be exalted, let his plan be at the forefront in the little things. So in the busyness of work, in the every small thing, it's how can I turn to God? And that's something that else that he's been working with me through. It's the constant keeping my eyes fixed on God, right? When things are coming up, when as I'm working on the podcast, not looking for just a major growth or anything like that, my eyes and my focus is fixed on God, and he is going to let the rest kind of come together. Another thing that I've been working on and dealing with, and how I noticed this has shown up, it's also kind of my worry and my stress, and I've noticed that they're really connected. When I trust God the most, I'm the least stress or worry or anything like that about just like day-to-day things. But then when I'm not, I've realized that like when I'm not focusing and trusting and leaning on him intentionally, I've noticed that my stress level is higher. And I would say like I feel like I've been doing really good on like my stress management, like that last episode that I kind of talked about, like managing my stress. And I feel like I have been managing my stress, but at the same time, there's still some low level of stress that I'm like, yo, I should be just like focusing and trusting on God's plan and what it is He's gonna do. And it's also like as I've been reading more in the Bible, like I was reading through Daniel, with my friend, and I'm also reading Hebrews now with her. And through the story of Daniel specifically, or just like the book of the Bible, I think it just shows like when like you exalt God in your life, that he will like fix everything, right? Like if you think about the three Hebrew boys who were thrown in the fiery furnace, when you think about the lion's den, like there's so many things that happen in Daniel's life in which it shows that he has just kept God at the forefront. And even when if you think literally the lion's den, like that lion like should have eaten him. All them lions should have ate him, right? But they didn't, and that just shows like when you put God at that forefront, no matter what trial or what test is coming your way, or that you're faced with, that He is going to provide a way out, situation. But that's only if you choose to trust Him, right? Like think about if Daniel didn't trust Him through any of the moments in his life, right? Like he wouldn't have been able to share his story. He wouldn't be here. He's not here. But he wouldn't have been able to share his story with the world for generations and generations to come if he wasn't focused on that aspect of it, And there's just like so many examples in the Bible. If you were to think about anyone in the Bible had to put their trust in God in some form of fashion. And you watch God move in their lives. But then also, if you think about it too, you also have seen examples and stories of people when they think they have trust God, but they don't fully trust God, and they take matters into their own hands. And when we take matters, like an example for that is like Abraham. So like Abraham, God promised him to have a son, blah, blah, blah. And he takes matters into his own hands with that situation. He didn't literally just sit back and be like, nope, God's not going to give me a son. I'm going to let it go and let that be. But he took matters to his own hand, and that's how some things, didn't go exactly as planned or as God's initial plan. And so I think that also reminds us too that it's not just about trusting Him, but it's trusting Him and no longer having a hand in it. Not saying that you don't have a hand in your life, but no longer trying to put the pieces together. And yeah, so I think that I've definitely been struggling with this, which is why I'm like doing a different type of episode. Like this is not me like, I guess, giving advice, or this is not me really sharing, but this is genuinely me coming as like, this is what I've been struggling with. And it's crazy because it's like this, the littlest things, like stuff at work or like, friendships, relationships, all the things. And it's like, girl, what are you worried about? What are you stressed about? Like, God got you. And I think that's just like a reminder to myself of like, no, God really has us. God really, when we truly are, living His way and leaning on Him and being like, I think about too, one of the devotion that we're doing for the Honesty Circle, it talks about being and remaining in. And I think that's another problem that, I face, because it's like I will get in, right, where I start to trust, but I don't remain in that level of trust. I go to that level of trust and then I go somewhere else, and then I go to the worry. But it needs to be constant. And I think that is what I'm learning, where it's like, no, every single day with every single thing in my life, I have to make that conscious effort that I'm going to choose to trust God, period. When I wake up and I say my morning prayer, right? And not just in that moment, but even on the days where things are not going my way, or I just, those days where you have a bad day in general, like on those bad days, God is still good at the end of the day. And it's not letting that bad day affect how you show up and trust in God and show up in your relationship with God. Because I know that's also something that I struggle with, where it's like you are super busy and you just had a bad day. Just had a bad day. I've had a few bad days in the past few weeks. And I'm like, I'm tired, so I'm not going to, you know, spend as much time with God at night like I typically do. Or I'm tired, so I'm not going to wake up as early to, have some time with God there. So, and that's not an excuse. So I truly have to choose God. I have to choose not just like what my natural reaction, my humanly reaction is telling me. Like that's the part of living for Christ. Like we are denying our flesh, we are denying ourselves of, our own way and submitting to his way and submitting to his plan because it's better. So how can we just practically do that? And that's like genuinely like a question that you can think about, like how am I going to practically do that in my life? And I've been thinking about like, what does that practically look like when I'm thinking about leaning and trusting God in the everyday? I'm like, okay, what am I thought about what am I not doing? So like I'm saying the prayers in the morning, right? And I'm like, invite God in, let his will be done. But it's also like after that prayer, what am I doing? Right? After that prayer, am I still choosing to worry? Am I still choosing throughout? And it's like, but at the end of the day, I don't want to look back, which is what been doing. I've been looking back and it's like, dang, like I didn't even try to acknowledge God throughout this day. And it was difficult, but I've been trying to allow him to help me through it. And like, how dumb is that? I'm literally his child. I'm literally a child of God. And I'm not allowing God and inviting him in throughout every moment and the difficult moments at work and all of that, so he can help me out. And so I started to think of like, okay, how can I do that? And it's like, okay, when I'm at work and I feel stressed, like that needs to be a moment where I'm coming to God and praying. That needs to be at my desk, right? Like I need to be at my desk being like, say a little prayer to help me out, to get me through the rest of the day and whatnot. So I just think that there's just so many other ways. Definitely comment below like what ways you think that you're going to constantly choose to trust God and trust God in the everyday and the small things. So that way we're not leaning on our own understanding, that we're not, making things go our way. So that's just something to think about. This could be a short episode, but this is something that God's been dealing with me on. And I just wanted to share with you guys because that's the point of the podcast, is for me to share what I'm going through. And so, yeah, so that's like a difficulty, which it's not that big of a deal, but I think that it will, when I finally am consistent in trusting God in every single day and on the small things, I make that conscious effort. I think that's when things will start to change for me personally, because like I said, I trust him with the big things. Like I trusted him with this podcast. I trusted him with the big steps in life of like what's next, right? But it's like every little step, how are you trusting? Every breath, how are you trusting? And so that's just something I've been thinking about. And, like I said, that God's been dealing with me on. And yeah, so that's kind of it for this week's episode. It's just to share that, like, if you're having something similar to me where you feel like you have those bad days and you're like, dang, I didn't even try to acknowledge God, but like, let's just make conscious efforts to be intentional of acknowledging God in those everyday small struggles, right? Like if I'm struggling to find a park, if I'm, struggling to, an assignment at work or an assignment in class for those who are in school, or whatever that small thing is that you think that, yes, I can do it. Yes, I have the strength and capacity to do it. But I'm just going to choose God, though. I'm still just going to choose God because he can still handle it with me. And I think that's like a big part that I've been missing personally. So if you've been missing it in your life, this is your encouragement to try and just be more conscious about it. That's all we can do. Just kind of make a conscious effort. So C's 2 cents for this week is just going to be that. Like, let's just make conscious efforts every day this week to trust God with the little things and with everything that's coming up in your life. And every small moment that might seem small to you, just choose to trust him. So That's my advice. You can take it or not. That is just my 2 cents. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. I know it's a little different, like I said, than what I typically go with, but I just want to be raw and real with you guys and just share what's really going on with me. So if you like anything that you heard today, definitely feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at The Honesty Circle with an underscore at the end to stay updated on Circle News. Thanks again for listening, and go conquer your week. Bye, y'all.